It's a heck of a deal to get old, except when you think of the converse of not getting old. Greetings, Zogling Wigger and Mamser Ass Clowns across the Spirit Nut Zog Plain here in the open air Coast to Coast Nut House we call Zog Babylon, the third and final. Let's see, today is the 15th of September 2022. It is what, 15 after 7? I'll try to go ahead and keep this within 15 minutes. This is Pastor Martin Luther Dejinski Lindstedt, or Martin Mad Dog Lindstedt, and I am an official candidate, write-in candidate for governor of, not governor, but U.S. Senate. Had a senile Joe moment there for a minute. Well, it looks like squirrels are living up in the oak tree and they're pelting me with acorns here, stupid squirrels. Anyway, it is a really nice evening. Really nice evening. It's around 80 degrees or so out here in mid-September. Now it's supposed to turn hot and then it's supposed to go ahead and turn cool again. We're supposed to have Indian summer. But, let's see here. During the last 2 weeks, I have been sending to Stanley County, South Dakota, pretty well telling Judge Bridget Meyer of Stanley County, pointing out to her that you committed a crime in conjunction with Bryan Rio attorney Robert Conrad. In that, Conrad stole my sister's confidential files, alerted Bryan Rio that it's something to steal, got together probably also with the Ohio authorities and the South Dakota authorities, and decided to have these bogus defamation trials. Now, they've really done that with Alex Jones. They have, essentially Zog has gotten away. Zog has gotten away. A bunch of, pretty well you have a bunch of criminals, and Jews, well, criminals, same thing. And what they do is that way back 200 years ago when they developed the Constitution, they had to convince a number of white men who had just used political violence, and warfare against the King of England and ran him and his loyalists out here. And these loyalists, if they hadn't had a place to run to, like I was telling this FBI agent named Sharkey back in 2003, there would have been a bloodbath. But they had Canada to run to, and then they later on had Australia to run to. They were driven out. They lost the jewel in the crown, the British crown did, in, 1781. So then you have them being ruled under the Articles of Confederation here, and that wasn't good enough for the rulers. You had someone like Daniel Shays coming in, and in western Massachusetts, of all places, you had a tax revolt. And that scared the hell out of the founding felons. They decided to get together and hold their little secret meeting of Masons and founding felons, and get together and come up with one constitution to rule them all, one constitution to find them, one constitution to bring them all, and under Satan bind them. And that's what they did. But later on, someone like Patrick Henry, who was my hero, the founding felon, says, well, what prevents you from doing whatever the hell you want to? Well, I know, we'll have a bill of goods. We'll go ahead and say the government can't go ahead and go against individual liberty and freedom of religion and freedom of the press and all that other good shit here. Well, what they do is they go ahead and use these bogus defamation trials to go against white supremacists like me property. And even though South Dakota state law 15-16A-6 says no, you can't go ahead and sell, you can't go ahead and execute on that property, everything's done. And Bridget Myers herself said that in her memorandum decision. But guess what? She has no intention of obeying those laws. You see, they use these defamation trials to get around so-called freedom of speech. Now, you end up having these retards and libertines and and rhino Republicans, like being run by Eric Schmidt or whatever in Missouri, who is running as a Republican, he goes ahead and says, well, they're a private organization. And the answer is that Facebook, Google, Apple, they're about as private an organization as, say, Pravda and TASS were under the Soviet Union. In the case of the New York Times, it's owned supposedly by a Jewish oligarch named Carlos Slim. The Washington Compost, which tells the story for the CIA, is totally liberal, is run by Jeff Bezos, who paid $250 million for it to the Jew owners, the Jew family owners, and took it over of Amazon. And you end up having all these organizations, and what they're run by is they're run by a certain tribe. We know who they are. And what they do is that they are the mouthpiece. Like the mouthpiece of Sauron or Moron, well, guess what? They're the mouthpiece of Zog. In the case of Facebook, the Jew owner said he was leaned on by the FBI. Well, I don't doubt that. The FBI, as they look at it, why they're out to compound disinformation, i.e., whatever lies the government wants to sell or push and force on people. And in the case of these courts, they use this. What? Oh, defamation. Brian Reel's now going against some French woman. Told me not to destroy anything I know about it. I didn't know anything about it till Brian Reel sent to me. And right now he's suing me again for, well, pretty well I said the Sword Brethren equals Brian Reel, and he got fired, for cause at the North Perry nuclear power plant. And what I'm pointing out, you end up having these idiots talk about more nuclear power plants. Well, you're idiots. Because if someone gets control of a nuclear power plant, they can destroy the water in which these nuclear fuel rods sit. They're not destroying the water, they're destroying the containment of this water. And I was reading the Wall Street Journal that they had a meltdown when a zirconium plate dropped from the roof in there, and they had a mini meltdown, and things got dicey. And this was back in 1960s when they were first building that. Well, what if someone throws a couple pounds of dynamite or goes against the water or the pumps which come into it? You can go ahead and have that thing melt down, and you'll end up having a couple 100,000-year mistake here to show the inhabitants, like in Northeast Ohio, that guess what? A so-called constipational repubic is a satanic form of government. I've gone ahead and discussed that. But anyway, I've gone ahead and sent out, and what I do is I don't really have too much money left. If you want to help me with the money, you can send money to Pastor Martin Lindstedt, Lindstedt, 338 Rap Track Road, P.O. Box 666, Granby, Missouri. You can drop off the 666 or the 338. Granby, Granby, Missouri 64844. But it's got sort of interest because I'm asking the Stanley County Court Clerk, are you going to go ahead and do with me the same thing you did when I went ahead and got certification? And it got sent on May 23rd, 3 days before you went ahead and had that illegal sale contrary to South Dakota law. And you just simply sent back. You wouldn't file stamp or nothing. So I'm not going to spend $3.75 for certification if you're going to ignore it anyway. Just go ahead and file stamp it here and then send me back the email. Well, I'm going to be back till later. So Robert Conrad, he goes ahead and whines, is that the South Dakota, it's this, allowing Mr. Lindstedt to have an appeal is totally against the South Dakota State Supreme Court. And he's right. The South Dakota State Supreme Court wrote every lawyer, every judges, every cops, every politicians, and their families' death sentence when they denied me an appeal and said I couldn't file anymore unless I hired a lawyer, and or I had this judge, Bridget Meyer, go ahead and allow the appeal to continue. We both know that isn't going to happen. So in short, using the court systems of Ohio, the state federal court systems of Ohio, and the state systems of South Dakota, lawyers have gone and let themselves, as lawyers, decide they can go ahead under color of law and take someone's property. And then they won't have any redress in the courts, which are run by other lawyers, and that the police, the sheriff's department, will go ahead and sell your property. Now, folks, that is a death sentence for any regime and anyone and their children. You don't argue with these people. You don't argue about what the law is. They have no intention of obeying any law. The law is whatever the hell they say it is, up until you start to lose power. And once they lose power, well, guess what? It goes the other way. The law is whatever you say it is. So I got from the judge's, secretary, Judge Meyer will go ahead and deny, will deny, Now, Robert Conrad, here he is. Essentially he goes ahead and drafts something, and Bridget Meyer goes ahead and signs it next time, but Robert Conrad really doesn't have a legal leg to stand on, because when I transferred my property to my sister and didn't tell her about it in October 2019, well, guess what? When she found out about Brian Real, she immediately wanted to quit claim it back to me and let me and Brian Real fight. But instead she was harassed by Judge Meyer, by Robert Conrad, Brian Rio, their own lawyer, Cody Kyrese, to sign it, since she owned it now, to sign over to Brian Rio, and they give her, maybe $100,000 for it, for a $2 million piece of property, which ended up supposedly selling to Brian Rio for $2.9 in stuff here, which is still sitting in front of the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, what is the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals going to do? Pretty well, the Negro Jew judge, Solomon Oliver, gave a $1 million judgment. Default judgment. Didn't even, unlike Alex Jones, didn't even initially, Brian Real, well, why don't you go ahead and say how you've been, damaged. That's what Federal Rule of Civil Procedure, Rule 26 says. You're supposed to go ahead with the computation damages. But guess what? Judge Christopher Boyko, now a senior judge, decided, well, guess what? I'm not going to go ahead and rule that. See, Judge Boyko actually believes that, guess what? These federal rules of civil procedure trump the plain language of the 7th Amendment to the Constitution, which says that in all civil disputes over $20, the right to a jury trial will not be done away with. But guess what? They get to do summary judgment, which is pretty well why they had jury trials. Now, this Northeast Ohio, jury trial, it, had an African female and a bunch of 7 other liberal Whiggers. And yeah, I got lynched by that lynch mob, and that's why I don't have a problem with Chernobyl, the North Perry nuclear power plant. Don't have a problem with wiping off the population of Northeast Ohio. And that is what is going to happen. One way or another. See, these liberals, what they want is they want to destroy the racist white man. Bad old white man. Bad old white man. And create in their image here, essentially, the homosexual, sexually perverse, and the messed up in the head. And they want to go ahead and use the police at the same time. They want to go after the police or defund the police at the same time. The police, which are so cowardly that 376 of them won't deal with one homosexual Mexican kid with a gun. They'll sit outside for an hour or more with their thumbs up their ass, waiting. Oh, I'm scared here to get shot. So pretty well, the entire system is on the verge of collapse. Senile Joe pretty well just put his thumb on the thing to where they came up with a deal for rail workers. Now what they've done for railway workers is, in order to get as much money, they went ahead and fired 10 or 15% of them. And so the ones who are remaining are having to work harder for less pay. They're getting tired. And pretty well what they wanted was higher pay, but they also wanted more railway workers hired. And that would go ahead and cut down on the bogus stock line, cut down on Warren Buffett's bit of money here. But they want more workers to be trained to operate those railways safely. I don't know if they can be such a deal. Pretty well Joe Biden is just simply frantic. And by the way, you better go ahead and get your gas within the next 2 months, because it's going to go up. He's selling off the strategic petroleum reserves in order to go ahead and keep the price of gasoline low. So let go down by 10-12%, even while food and everything else is going up. It's not going to go down until you end up having a total economic change. Meanwhile, the Russians, they decided to prop up, the southern front in Kherson, and so they left the area around in northeast Ukraine, around Kharkiv, 25 miles away from the Russian border. They let go, and yes, they went ahead and ran and left a number of military, essentially military equipment. But hey. It'll pretty well make Vladimir Putin decide to, maybe he needs to go ahead and turn a little bit mean rather than fight this war with kid gloves and essentially Donbass militias here. The main point I'm trying to make here is that the system is so corrupt, but it's so fragile. It can be destroyed real easily. And pretty well my position has been the same since the 13th of June, 2016, that the North Perry nuclear power plant needs to be Chernobyl. Needs to go ahead and made into a radiological free fire zone. And in the case of South Dakota, since February 27, 2020, I knew it would end up being this way. They would go ahead and take my property, because I am a white supremacist. They have good reason to think I'm a domestic terrorist here. See, the one thing I can do is I can talk to you, and some of you will vote for me, even fewer will go ahead and send me money, but some for your own reasons here will, you see a unguarded nuclear power plant which is open, or you see a regime criminal and his family, and you have the chance to go ahead and shoot them or kill them, do whatever you want to them. That's fine. And I've always been this way. I've had fights with Claire the Jucal Wolf. I've had fights with militia generals. I've had other fights with other people. You can't go ahead and destroy Zogbots and Zoglings. You can't go ahead and destroy servants of Satan and their families. Well, I'm simply saying that if you do so, be you Bill Stormroot or Robert Bowers or Peyton Getterin, I'm not going to say anything bad about you. In fact, I will praise you for your sacrifice, because it's still against the law to raise up your hand against Zog. So anyway, that is my commentary for the 15th September 2022, and hopefully you'll send me a little bit of Zog bucks to survive here. But I am an official write-in candidate for the United States Senate. So until then, hail victory.